Fellas, it's been official for quite some time now that UFC 308 is going to be in Abu Dhabi, and considering that we've had quite a few Saudi Arabian and Abu Dhabi cards recently, I mean, we've got a fight night up and coming, we've just had UFC Saudi Arabia, and the fact that Arman Tsarukyan versus Islam Makhachev is kind of in jeopardy, I thought it'd be the perfect time to make a really stacked UFC 308 card, so that's exactly what I've done. I've made a stacked 308 main card in Abu Dhabi, and I've also added I've added three additional fights that you could also add to this card, whether it be on the prelims, whether it be on replacements for the main card. Three additional fights at the end of this main card that I think you could also add to this fight card. So let me know your thoughts on this whole situation with Islam Makhachev and Arman Tsarukyan, and who should be the replacement if Tsarukyan can't fight. But we'll go in there with the first fight on the main card, and the main card opener for this card is Ikram Aliskerov versus Roman Kopylov. Two Russian prospects going against each other. Now, both of these guys have lost to people in the rankings. Obviously, Ikram Aliskerov just had a big step up in competition, lost to Robert Whittaker. Roman Kopylov got submitted by Anthony Hernandez, but they've both, well, Roman Kopylov's come back with a win over Almeida. I think this is a really good fight to make because these guys are some of the best unranked guys in the middleweight division. Obviously, Roman Kopylov, he's probably a win or two away from being ranked. I mean, he did get a ranked fight in Anthony Hernandez, obviously lost that fight, but he's just got that win over Cesar Almeida, and he's not long away from being ranked again. And for Ikram Aliskerov, this dude's still super talented. I always said he was one of my favorite prospects in the UFC, and just because he had a massive step up against Robert Whittaker, I don't think we can look at that and say that he got fraud checked or anything like that. I think Ikram Aliskerov versus Roman Kopylov is a really fun fight to make on a main card of an Abu Dhabi card. Two Russian guys going against each other. You've got the striking of Roman Kopylov, and I mean, he showed a lot of ground game in his last fight against Cesar Almeida. And for Ikram Aliskerov, we know how well-rounded this dude is. We're going to see him improve since the Whittaker fight, and I think the winner of this fight could definitely break into the rankings, or at least get close to getting ranked. So Ikram Aliskerov, Roman Kopylov, I think that's a really good fight you can make to open up the main card. Like I said, two big Russian prospects in the UFC. They've both fought against ranked opponents in the past. They both failed, putting them against each other. I think the winner of this fight could make a case to say that they are probably one of the best unranked middleweights out there. So Ikram Aliskerov, let's have him back in Abu Dhabi after the main event in Saudi Arabia, and let him take on Roman Kopylov for the main card opener. Great way to start the main card there. And then the fourth fight down on the card, I've gone for Sergey Pavlovich versus the winner of Sergey Spivak and Marcin Tybura. Now, it's been pretty much confirmed that Sergey Spivak and Marcin Tybura are going to be taking each other on in a fight night in August. And I think, yeah, UFC 308 is in October, so I feel like the winner of Sergey Spivak and Tybura, they're going to want a fairly big fight, and I feel like Sergey Pavlovich is the perfect fight because Pavlovich, he had a really good win over Curtis Blades, but he's on a two-fight losing streak, and they're both not the best losses. I mean, the opponent is very high level, but it's the way that he lost. He got slept in the first round against Tom Aspinall and absolutely destroyed and battered by Alexander Volkov. I think it's safe to say that Sergey Pavlovich, if he wants to get back on track, he's going to need a bit of a step down in competition. I don't think giving him somebody like Cyril Gane is the best opportunity or the best idea for him now. So let's give him a fairly, not an easy fight, but a fight that could potentially get him back on track against someone who's coming off a win. Either it's going to be Sergey Spivak coming off a win over Marcin Tybura, or it's going to be Tybura on a two-fight winning streak against Spivak and Tatu Ivaza. Both of these guys, I feel like, are in that position where they can kind of call for a big fight now if they beat each other. Sergey Spivak and Tybura, they fought before. If Tybura wins, he'd have been on a two-fight winning streak against Tuivasa and Spivak. I think him versus Pavlovich could be quite interesting. Or we can have Sergey versus Sergey if Sergey Spivak is able to beat Marcin Tybura. Because you've got to remember, before the Cyril Gane loss, Spivak was actually on a bit of a streak, and Marcin Tybura has won most of his, won most of his last 10 fights. So the winner of Sergey Spivak and Marcin Tybura, let's give them a big fight. Let's give them Sergey Pavlovich, which, I mean, if you'd have showed me this fight 2 years ago, I'd have told you to put the drinks down because this is absolutely crazy fight. But nowadays, the fact that Pavlovich is on a two-fight losing streak and they're not the best losses as well because of the way that he lost, I think this is probably the best fight you could give Sergey Pavlovich right now. Pavlovich, winner of Spivak and Tybura, on the fourth fight down of this UFC Abu Dhabi pay-per-view. And then the featured fight, this is a really big fight to say that it's the featured fight of the card. And I've gone with Khamzat Chimaev versus Jared Cannonier. Now, Chimaev, he just had a main event opportunity against, obviously, Robert Whittaker, pulled out, and his last win was all the way at UFC 294 against Usman, and even that was a controversial fight. Before that, it was a weight miss against, well, it was supposed to be Nate Diaz, and then it was Kevin Holland. So Chimaev, I don't think he deserves to be getting these big main event on fight nights anymore. I don't even think he deserves to be the co-main event of a pay-per-view. I'm not saying it's his fault for being ill, but the dude's career and the dude's momentum has completely shifted. So if we need to give Chimaev a fight to get back on track, I think him versus Cannonier is a perfect fight. We're still giving Chimaev that big fight where we can kind of see how good he's in the middleweight division, but we're not giving him a #1 contender fight. We're not giving him the Robert Whitakers or the Israel Adesanyas. We're giving him Cannonier, who is still one of the best in the division. He's ranked number 5. He was on a bit of a streak before the loss to Imavov, and if he'd have beaten Imavov, he could have called for a title shot. And plus, the Imavov loss weren't even that bad. It was a very early stoppage, and I'm pretty sure Cannonier is wanting to get back in there soon. Cannonier versus Chimaev, it's a really good fight as well, because if Jared Cannonier can beat Chimaev, that puts Cannonier straight back into the title talks, because like I said, it wasn't the worst loss to Imavov. He's put together some really good wins in the middleweight division. If he can be the first guy to beat Chimaev, that puts Cannonier straight back in the title talk. And if Chimaev can go out there, beat Jared Cannonier, who's definitely his best win in the middleweight division so far, that's where we can start seeing Chimaev in #1 contender fights. And we're actually going to see Chimaev make it to the octagon. Let's put him in a featured fight in Abu Dhabi, and I'm pretty sure Chimaev can't even fight outside of Abu Dhabi anyway, or Saudi Arabia or whatever. So Chimaev, Cannonier, really fun fight you can make as a featured fight. And I would say that this is the toughest test of Chimaev's career so far, because Cannonier is a dangerous guy. So Jared Cannonier, Khamzat Chimaev, the featured fight of the night, and then the co-main event. This is a big fight. Kamaru Usman versus Shavkat. I know a lot of people have some problems with this. Some people either love this matchup or they hate it. I don't know why people are so against this matchup, because Usman, okay, he got knocked out by Edwards, and then he lost again, and then he had that really, really close fight with Chimaev, which a lot of people should have argued that it should have been a draw. And plus, that was on short notice as well. I say, you give Kamaru Usman, one of the greatest welterweights of all time, a full training camp against Shavkat. If Kamaru Usman can beat Shavkat, that is a massive win. He's just stopped arguably the biggest hype train in the UFC right now in Shavkat Rakhmonov, and even though Usman's a former champion, I don't think anyone really expects him to get any title shot again. That is a massive win on Usman's career, a massive comeback. And again, if Shavkat Rakhmonov can beat Kamaru Usman, that is his #1 contender fight done. If he beats Kamaru Usman, he's 100% deserving of a title shot, and that will completely shift the hype all the way to Shavkat. If that dude can finish Kamaru Usman, that's a massive win for Shavkat. The hype is all going to be on him, even more hype than he has now, and he can get a title shot from that. I think Shavkat Usman, really, really fun fight stylistically. The biggest test for Shavkat as well, because you've got to realise his best win so far is Neil Magnet and Stephen Thompson. To go from those guys to one of the greatest welterweights of all time in Kamaru Usman, that's a big test. Co-main event, Usman, Shavkat, full training camp, 5 rounds as well. I won't even mind if this is 5 rounds, considering it's a #1 contender, well, not a #1 contender fight, but considering if Shavkat wins and gets a title shot, let's give him that 5-round experience. Usman, Shavkat, 5 rounds as the co-main event for UFC Abu Dhabi. I'm all for this matchup. I don't know the whole narrative of giving Usman 3 easy wins. I mean, the dude's still greatest welterweight of all time, or not the greatest welterweight of all time, but one of the greatest welterweights of all time. I think he should be still having these fun fights. Usman, Shavkat, co-main event, and then the main event, Islam Makhachev versus Gamrot. Now, hear me out. Listen, if they can get the Arman Tsarukyan fight done, 100% sign me up for that fight. Of course, I want to see that fight over Gamrot. But if Arman Tsarukyan's unavailable, I feel like Gamrot's the only option. Some people have said that they should run it back with Dustin Poirier or give Justin Gaethje a chance. Both of these guys have just been finished in their last fight. I don't think Gaethje's coming back this year, and Dustin Poirier's literally just lost to Islam Makhachev. I don't think that really makes any sense. People have said Max Holloway. Now, even though if Max Holloway says he wants to fight for the 155 belt, do it. But I don't understand why anyone would want Holloway to fight Makhachev over Topuria. I think Topuria's a much more winnable fight than Islam Makhachev. I think both him and Topuria are like their stock is massive right now. He's just got that KO over Gaethje at UFC 300. Topuria's just KO'd Volkanovski. Their stock is massive. That's a big fight to make, and I also think it's just much more winnable. So I'm not a fan of Holloway getting a shot at 155 just yet. Some people have said run it back with Charles Oliveira. I can kind of understand why they might want that. Oliveira and him fought before. He got the rematch and then pulled out, and he just lost to Arman Tsarukyan by split decision. So I guess if Tsarukyan's unavailable, you could do Oliveira. But I feel like Gamrot's probably the one that makes the most sense. He's on a 2-fight winning streak right now. He's the only guy who's really coming off wins in the lightweight division at the top level as well, besides obviously Arman Tsarukyan. And he's got a win over Tsarukyan before. I know a lot of people question the decision, but Gamrot has beaten Arman Tsarukyan before. The only problem is he got absolutely smoked by Beneil Dariush at UFC 280, but he's on a 2-fight winning streak again. I know that Fiziev was an injury loss, and an injury win, in the Dos Santos fight. You know, it's Dos Santos at the end of the day, but if there's nobody else, Makhachev versus Gamrot for this stacked card. That's kind of why I've had to stack this card, because of the main event. Makhachev versus Gamrot. And listen, we've seen Islam Makhachev face a wrestler. People always question how Makhachev would look if he faces a wrestler rather than a striker or a BJJ guy. This is that wrestler that we can put him against. Mateusz Gamrot, Islam Makhachev for the main event. And then the other fights that I think you could add to the main card, whether it be replacements for fights that are already on the main card or fights that you could add to the prelims. Sharipov Magomedov versus Bruno Ferreira. This is one of the best striking matchups you can make. in the middleweight division, apart from obviously the rankings as well. Sharipov Magomedov, undefeated, really good kickboxer. I don't see him having a massive future in the UFC, but I think he's one of the most interesting strikers. So let's keep that momentum and give him Bruno Ferreira, who's an absolutely dangerous KO artist. Bruno Ferreira hits like an absolute truck. Him versus Sharipov Magomedov. No way this goes the distance. That'll be such a fun fight to see on the feet. Have that as like the main featured fight of the prelims. And then another fight, Said Nurmagomedov versus Pedro Munoz. I want to see Said Nurmagomedov get a ranked fight. I know he was supposed to be facing someone on UFC Saudi Arabia. Let's give him Pedro Munoz, ranked number 15th. If he can beat Munoz, that lets Said Nurmagomedov into the rankings. I think it's quite a fun fight stylistically as well to get Said Nurmagomedov on the main card or on the prelims of UFC Abu Dhabi. So Said Nurmagomedov versus Munoz is another fun fight. And if they can pull this off, that's a really good fight as well. Brandon Royval versus Amir Albazi, if they can pull this off, great fight. I mean, it's a #1 contender fight in the flyweight division. I know we've got Makhachev taking on, obviously, Manel Kape. Apparently, Kaya Sakura is going to be taking on Pantoja. So why not have another #1 contender fight? Brandon Royval, Amir Albazi. Amir Albazi got the win over Kaikar France, but he still needs another win because that was a very close fight. And for Brandon Royval, he beat Brandon Moreno, but he's only just lost to Pantoja at UFC 296. Royval, Albazi, winner gets a title shot. That's another fight you can add to the Abu Dhabi card. But that is my UFC Abu Dhabi card, the entire main card, and a couple other fights you could add to the card just to make it better. So let me know your thoughts on these matches, and let me know your thoughts on this whole situation with Arman Tsarukyan. Do you think he's actually going to fight for the belt in his next fight? What do you think? Let me know. Thank you for watching.